Afternoon, guys. I'm really excited to do today's video. So excited. So I get asked the question about vintage saws. The same questions, 2 or 3 questions. They come up all the time. And after speaking recently to another prolific collector of old saws, I realized that some of the features of some of these engines might be just lost on people, and they're just lost in plain sight, and you might be discounting them for a completely wrong reason. And so it's going to be really interesting. I've got a cross section of saws outside. I can't bring them all out because there's not enough time or space. So I've got a range of saws which start in the 50s and go through maybe 3 decades, depending on their model run. And we'll answer just 3 or 4 basic questions, and you're going to find one surprising winner at the end, and it will be stand out alone the winner. And there's some fantastic saws out here, and we could bring a load more out. So what have I brought out as a cross section? What should we go in? CCs, or left to right, Echo, 60S, iconic saw. Echo's build quality is second to none. Their enameling, the attention to detail, the fixtures, the intricacy on the oilers, on the fuel pipe and the pickup in the arrangement, the double screening, just spectacular, beautiful. Even more complex above it, the twin, the 60cc twin, super rare, beautiful engineering. Steel 045. Bit bigger, 75ccs. What are they? They're so that's a 4834. This is a 50. They're a 5238. West German, mid 70s. Spectacular saw. Okay, gorgeous. That one's in showroom condition. Fantastic. Directly in front of it, then going a bit earlier, then back into the late 50s. Danarm DD8F, British. Villiers engine, 2-inch piston, 2-inch bore and stroke actually matched. So spectacular characteristics. To the right of it, mid to late 70s saw monster. That's the not so much commonly known by people in the UK. That's a 60142, kind of bigger sister of the 60135. So 58mm piston, 40mm stroke. What shares that size? Something very famous, which we could have brought out. Okay, spectacular. Behind her, another Solo Rex. Matched bore and stroke, 54mm piston, 54mm stroke, 125ccs. To the right of her, we've got a Partner R14T, 76ccs. It's the mid-60s, just towards the mid to late 60s, 67, 68, 67, I think. 5236 piston, bore and stroke. To the far right, you might be able to see it, Pioneer 650. And I love the Pioneer 650s. 57mm piston, 40mm stroke, circa 103ccs, and then in the front, down on 110, British saw, started life a bit before the 650, 2.5-inch piston, 1.375-inch stroke, so roughly 64.5 and just under 35. Okay, cross section, and from 60 up to 125ccs, bit of a spread. So the 2 smaller saws are really just to identify a problem which saws have, but really this is talking about running a comfortable saw, a big saw. When I say comfortable, you put it onto any size wood and it's always going to be comfortable. It'll either be faster or slower, but it's never going to be struggling. Just not in the words of struggling, it just won't. And so one of the questions I get asked is always about the power. How much power do the saws make? What size bar can I run? Kind of linked, although there's some factors in that. In fact, we'll touch on that as well. 5 horsepower on a 2000 model saw against 5 horsepower on a 1950s saw. Is it the same? It's the same number? No, it's not. It's just, they're a mile apart. They're just a mile apart. And if anybody needed any evidence of it, a lot of people that like old engines like me probably love old racing cars and love perhaps watching racing, but maybe you don't like quite so much the new racing cars, and then you'll see that it's a really interesting stat. If you look at the horsepower figures for those engines, they're immense. Power to weight ratio second to none. If you look at the RPMs that they use, somebody like Alonso pulling away the Aston Martin or Ocon or Hamilton, or you look at the RPMs needed on those Formula 1 engines to get them off the mark fast. They're between 10 and 11,000 RPM just to get the thing off the line. So 1 horsepower figure is great if you can keep it in its window, and there's certain characteristics about some of these saws which mean they're always in their window. They're always just right. Okay, so performance is important. Maintenance, can you keep it going? It's the golden question, isn't it? People want to buy something, they love something old, and then can I make it last? Can I use it for the next 2 or 3 years? Can I buy the parts for it? Okay, so can you maintain it? Can you buy the parts for it? So the consumables might be important, or very important. Hope he's not going to lash down, guys. And maybe some of the things which, you know, if something got broken, could you replace it? Or is it a done deal then? The minute you break something, you break the fuel tank, you've got your XF, your outside cutting, you damage the fuel tank, you just go and bolt another one on, don't you? Which of course you don't, which is why the XF isn't outside. Or the Contra. But anyway, we'll come on to it. Okay, so there's a number of issues. Power, is it reliable? Can I keep it running? Yep. Cosmetics, is it important how it looks to some people? Okay, so out of all the saws you're going to pick in history, I think there's one saw which, if it's not the best, it sits among all of them at the very top, because it isn't the most powerful, it doesn't cut the quickest, it definitely isn't the prettiest. That's going to be along the lines of something like the XF, one of the most beautiful saws. Some of the Johnsons are incredible. Actually, some of the other ones, depending on how far you go back, some of my old Titan saws are amazing. So there's other things which might be more interesting, might be more beautifully engineered in terms of their complexity, but that's not what this is about. So it won't be the most powerful, it won't be the prettiest, but it will be powerful, and they're beautiful in their own way, and you will be able to keep it running, and it will be reliable, and it will probably outlast all of the others for really a number of reasons. Okay, so which way round do we start? Do we start with, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll jump in with the Danarm 110, hiding in plain sight for everybody. People will be thinking, Danarm 110? Okay, so I've got a challenge. I'm going to almost guarantee I'm going to tell you a few things about the Danarm 110 that you didn't know. And that's become apparent from several other people that are prolific collectors I've spoken to recently. They just didn't think about it. But let's get to it then. Okay, the Danarm 110. All mag alloy saw, started life in the early 60s, and so underrated in terms of what you have in front of you. So, alright, let's talk about the questions. Power. This girl then, 63.5mm piston, we'll go metric, 2.5 inch piston, 1.375. So 63.5 and 35mm, let's call it that. Yeah, circa 5 horsepower, however they measured it back then. So nominal 110 cc's. On paper, bars in chain setups are really interesting. On paper, you can, I've got a couple myself with stubbies, 16-inch stubby bars, which I absolutely love running. It's just like running my 051 with a 16 to 21 inch bar. I absolutely love it. I also have one set with, so this girl is one of my show saws. This one's set with a nominal 19-inch bar, and I have one with a 24, one with a 28, and interestingly I've got a DD8F set with a 32, and so on paper I think they say up to 24-inch bar, but of course that really depends on how you're running it. So you could quite easily put, as I found on one of my other ones, you put a 28-inch bar and run a skip tooth, spectacular. You could run a 28-inch bar with, and switch it to semi-chisel, skip tooth, and you'll find they'll just be relentless and just cut through. Just beautiful. Okay, so beautiful, powerful engine. Just beautiful. All of these saws, yep, they're all very, very powerful as well. Okay, so in terms of cutting characteristics, the DD8F I actually prefer with the match bore and stroke. I'd say it's, but she doesn't trump the DDA110 for a few other reasons. Okay, so she's plenty powerful enough. You can cut down a big tree with the DDA110. Alright. Cosmetics. What do we like of the look of this thing? Personally, I love it. They are beautifully balanced. Come in around the £24 mark with a 16.5-inch bar or 16-inch bar, and they are about £25.5 with the 21-inch bar, circa £25. You know, not unmanageable. Top fill for both the fuel and the oil. You don't have to put the saw on its side. Little foot stand for aiding to start it. So really, really simple to actually place down, pick up. Fantastic knuckle guard. Non-AV, nothing to break on AV. Alright, let's get to something really important. Yep, they'll all cut well. All these saws cut so well. Cosmetics. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the DD8Fs. I am, and I love the look of the Rexes. So that's very, very personal. Maintenance. I'm going to tell you some things about the DDA110 that I wonder if you ever knew. So I've got outside two variations of a toolkit for a DDA110. Let me know how it compares to anything you've seen. So this is the first toolkit. A flathead and one wrench or one spanner. That's the basic toolkit. And ask yourself honestly when you look at your saw later, say, wow, could I do that with my saw? And this is the complex toolkit, which is a multi-wrench. So a screwdriver, bar stud and plug spanner, and the same wrench. So, things you may not have known about a DDA110. So this wrench does the felling spike nuts. You see, okay, big deal. Yep. And this screwdriver undoes the top. So it's one screw. One screw, the top comes off, then the heat shroud underneath, which directs the air, just lifts off. It's maintained with two rubber grommets or large rubber bushes which sit on top and hold it down. So it's rubber bushed. So one screw and the lid comes off and you're to the air filter and to the spark plug. Right. The air filter doesn't require any tools because it's a thumb screw, just a wing nut, and it just undoes. You say, okay, well, loads of saws are like that. Right. Front of the exhaust uses the same screwdriver and the exhaust cover comes off. You say, okay, yeah, lots of saws are like that. I agree, lots of saws are like that. And if I actually wanted to take off the air filter and get to the back of the carburetor and work on it, it's the same screwdriver, it's the two, and this is really important. And none of these things are hindered. It's clean access to every one at each angle. This is one of the early Danarms, so the short handle, no rubber inset. So at present, all we're talking about using is the screwdriver. Top cover's off, back of the carburetor's off, and actually the air filter housing is now off. What if you need to get into the fuel tank and actually change the filter? Well, it's 2 screws which again are unhindered from the top. The fuel assembly comes out. Yep, Rob, we got it. Some of these don't even need a screwdriver. They've just, like the Contras, you get to them, it's just a plug, it pulls out and you just pull it out and you can service the fuel pipe. Okay, I get it. So you've got the top cover off. Okay, pull start housing. The same flathead screws. There's one nut on there. Strangely, or by design, that nut is the same size as the felling spike nuts. Okay, yeah. So you can take off the pull start housing just with our toolkit. Okay, this is the baby toolkit. The carburettor is held on with 2 nuts which are the same size, so you can take off the carburettor. The oil plunger is held on with the same size headed bolt, so you can take off the oil plunger and service it. The oil tank assembly at the front is held on with 4 slotted screws, so the oil tank comes off. You say, yeah, okay, yep. Then we've got to save the best parts, guys, haven't we? The barrel. The barrel is held on with the same size nuts. This spanner takes off the barrel, so you can take the barrel and piston off. The 2 nuts which hold on the exhaust to the barrel, they're the same size. So the exhaust comes off with the same spanner. You think, oh right, okay. Underneath, guys, the fuel tank. The fuel tank holds on. So here's a brand new Danarm in blue fuel tank. 4 holes. The fuel tank unbolts, and you know what it holds on, don't you? It's the bolts with the same size spanner. So, on the Danarm DDA 110, with this toolkit, 1 spanner, 1 screwdriver. I forgot to mention as well, the front handle is held on as well with 3 bolts, all of which are the same size. So with those 2 items, you can take off the top cover, take off the exhaust, remove the front handle, take off the felling spike, you can take off the air filter, remove the carburettor, you can take off the manifold, you can take off the pull start housing, you can take off the fuel tank, and have this in a pile of bits on the floor. With those 2 items, and if you have the one with the wrench, you can take off the guide bar and remove the spark plug. You can do all of that with these 2 items. Now that in itself is incredibly impressive, and there's virtually no other saws, and we can go through any of them that can do that. But strangely, that's not the most impressive thing. Hey guys, cut off midstream, low battery. So, if I repeat, forgive, please. So strangely, I think I was saying about the taking apart the saw and how it's incredibly impressive to be able to do it with such a small collection of tools. Two tools. But that's not the most impressive thing about this saw. Already that eclipses so many other saws. If you just wanted to be able to do those things. I don't know if I also mentioned as well, with the same tool, everything open. You can adjust the high and the low needle settings. Again, completely unencumbered. There's so few saws that you can do this on. It's hard to describe to people how few the number of saws are. Okay, so you've got your sawing pieces. Can you keep it running? So, any of you know some of the saws, you'll know how many saws use intricate or custom molded grommets, either for the tanks or for where they come up into manifolds. So the Danarm DDA 110 just uses standard large bore pipe, both inside the tank and from the top of the tank outlet to the carburettor, which is literally, I think it's 20 mil long. So No issue with the fueling, all the filters. The gaskets, it's a standard HL. There's no fancy gaskets, no internal collars to actually hold things together, no rubber manifolds or bellows which are going to split. The carburetor goes on and she is ready for action. You're not going to break any throttle lock springs, there aren't any. It uses a metal lever at the back. Simple and beautiful, locks it in place. Running gear. This is what separates the DDA 110 from models like the DD8F. As they're a little earlier, lots of the 50s saws will be running, depending on the size of the engine, predominantly 1/2 inch or 7/16. Some of it was running 9/16 in the early 50s. Obviously the gear drive saws, and then the bigger ones were running 3/4 inch. The DDA 110 is at that wonderful crossover period which is running 404. You can also put a 3/8 rim sprocket on, and she's solid nose bar, so you can run her on all the modern chains should you wish, which is absolutely fantastic. So there's no issue running chains on this girl. And carburetor kits are still what's fitted to so many different saws. It's an HL carburetor, no custom issue with that. And if you're unfortunate and things break, and this is the distinction we talked about at the very beginning, these questions about, is it powerful enough? Can I take it apart? Can I service it? Yes, it's powerful enough. Yes, you can take it apart. Yes, you can service it. Can you get the bits? So any of you running anything old and special, honestly ask yourself, if I broke the fuel tank on my XF, if I broke the fuel tank on my Contra, how big a job is that? You just got to be honest with that, haven't you? The 075, 076, the fuel tanks, can you buy them? Can you even get these things? They're so impossible. They have an inside second part of the tank with custom gaskets and a myriad of screws. You start looking, where would you get a replacement fuel tank for a Rex? Even to get the thing apart and to fit it. Lots of the older models, the fuel tank is integral to the crankcase. When they get damaged, that's the saw done now, unless you have another donor saw. Did I mention that the tank on a Danarm 110 comes off with 4 bolts? People say the 650 is part of the crankcase. Those people that think the 650 is based on the 110, come on guys, you've got to be better than that. It's just different. It's just different. Everything. Tank vents, tank vent pipes, any special mechanisms. The Danarm fuel tank cap is vented, 3 screws, same screwdriver, lets you service the vent on the tank. You will not believe how many tasks you can complete with the flathead screwdriver on a Danarm 110. It belies the function that it actually gives you, belies what you would believe possible. You won't break any throttle lock springs, there aren't any. You aren't going to have problems with AV mounts, there aren't any. You're not going to struggle with specialist tools because you don't need any. And if you break anything, and really the only way you break a Danarm 110 is just through handling and handling errors. If you drop it, yep, it's rigid. It's not going to bounce like a modern plastic saw. But if you look after your saw, the Danarm 110 won't just do you 1 or 2 or 3 seasons. These saws last people lifetimes. And because there's so many donor saws available, unlike any of the other big saws that we're looking at, you try to find a Rex or Super Rex for spare parts, they're just unavailable. You try to find a Contra S for spare parts, nowhere. I mean nowhere. 111S John Suits, nowhere. XFs, you don't find spare parts for them. So these people have this view of how amazing some of the European saws are and some of the West German saws, some of the big American saws, and yet close to home we've got the 110cc Danarm. In this respect, this girl trumps the 125 as well, because the 125 has a less common crank arrangement, which is a harder part to get. The 110, we'd be able to keep this girl running for years. I'd like to think it would last most people another lifetime. So this girl is already circa 60 years old, and almost any job you care to look at on this saw, you've already seen how quick and how simple it is to break it down. Some of the other saws, they're just not like that. Compare it with any of the other saws. Try finding any electrics for a 611 twin. Try finding coil for a 60S. Try finding a barrel and piston for an 045 or a 56, or the SEM ignition, and suddenly it'll throw it into perspective that you've got a 110cc saw that you can literally do anything with, that you can put on a 16-inch bar, probably for the cost of the ignition. In fact, I already know for a matter of fact, if you had to find a 611 or a 610 EVL ignition, a twin ignition set, if you could even find one, you could probably buy 3 beautifully spec'd Danarm 110s with different bar setups. There's just no comparison. And not only is it just amazing in all those regards, starts and runs flawlessly, and just such a beautiful piece of British engineering. Right guys, so interestingly then, this girl has not taken a disc, I don't think, in over 6 years, and she's a show saw. It's a brand new full chisel chain, and also have a mint semi-chisel chain also for this saw, which is I think what she last took a disc with. It's years and years ago. You just pick them up and she just runs flawlessly. You know, the only thing really that the Danarms require that they don't fare well with is they don't fare well left on the ground, because the mag alloy cases are just prone to rotting. So if you're just kind, like you should be with any engineered product, at the end of the day, if you finish cutting, you dust her off, clean the base, make sure she's not left on the dirt or on a damp ground or grit or mud. If you do that, this girl is just going to serve you for a very, very long time. And right, she's long overdue for taking a disc, isn't she? Let's hit the compressor off. We've got some conifer, we've got some monkey puzzle, fir tree, we've got some chestnut and some ash. Let's take a couple of discs, see how the old girl performs. Very, very excited to take some discs with this girl. Oh. Particularly when they haven't been cut with for so long. Right guys, what shall we start with? I don't know what she's like in the cut, so perhaps we'll just gnarly, knotty stuff. Actually, the monkey puzzle is particularly nasty. Let's get a pair of gloves on. Actually, that's ridiculous. I can't show that to a Danarm, she's laughing at me. Right, let's try her on. Okay. Look at this, so like 14-inch. Make sure she's happy because she's just not used. And yeah, we'll take a few discs. Right. Dreadful habit I have, in fact that's my only criticism, is the kill switch is right next to your throttle finger with gloves on. As you see, I've caught it twice now. And again, third time's a charm. Hey guys, so there she is, the beautifully impressive Danarm 110. Other than me knocking off the kill switch with my finger, strange. If I didn't want to keep them all original, I'd put a short stubby kill switch on there to stop my forefinger from knocking that. I do it a lot on my 125. It's just, there you go. What a beautiful, beautiful running saw. As you just saw when I was did the first cut, she's tiny bit rich, how they're often set by me. And there you go. Now she's had a few cuts. We've just leaned her slightly.